Hey everyone, it's Strange Michael. I hope you're doing well today. I decided to take a little bit of a break. I need to come back around and start doing my reviews for other things, for the summertime to review for you guys. One of the things I do want to talk about, I picked up recently in a small haul for the week. I bought these two manga books, and this is the first ever manga I've reviewed for this channel, so that's kind of something different. It's not Dragon Ball Super, which is sad, because I finished watching that show, and now I'm reading the manga for that, and it is fantastic so far. But I did pick up another set of a series that is a horror manga, and typically my experience to this, my exposure to horror manga, not horror comics, but horror manga from Japan, typically I'm not very impressed, because I've read like the first volume of the Resident Evil one from years ago, or at least the one with Chris Redfield, I think was the main character of that one, and it sucked. Usually it's a zombie-focused thing. And then you have like that one guy, I think his name is it Junji or Jinji Ito? Anyway, he's very famous as a horror mangaka or whatever they're called. I've never read any of his stuff, but I've heard a lot of things. I've seen some great art from his work as well. And I love manga, I love comics, I love all that kind of stuff. Don't be surprised if you see more comic-related horror stuff in the future, but anyway, I picked up this one because it kind of spiked my interest. I'm used to these manga series being like Dragon Ball Z or Naruto, having like 27 volumes that could be in color, typically are in black and white. And I thought, you know, I'll pick this up because in the corner of the front of this book, it said 1/2, as in 1 out of 2. And I was like, fractions? I'm down for some fractions that are that small. That means there's only 2 books in the series. So I looked for the other one. It was sitting right beside it, and I grabbed both. And both of these books together are about 20 bucks, 10 bucks a piece. That's not bad. The series itself is written by Tsukasa Saimura, and I guess the art is done by Kozo Takahashi. I'm really bad with names. I am so sorry. I guess I'll go ahead and reveal the cover here. The first volume that I'm going to review right here, and I'll review the second in the next video, is called Crueler Than Dead. Now, like I said, I'm used to these things being like 27 books long instead of just 2, which threw me off. Also, here is book 2. Yeah. That's a little bit better. This seems like it's a little bit thicker than this one, maybe by like 15 pages, maybe 20 pages. Just enough you can tell the difference between your fingers. But anyway, yeah, on the corner here, it says 1 out of 2, and I was like, hey, that's pretty nice. You know, I was kind of surprised by that. I'm not used to seeing that on anything, because usually manga is so everlasting sometimes with things like One Piece that were basically around before I was alive and are still going on for the TV show and for the actual books. I'm a little surprised when I don't see series that are at least like 6 and 7 books long. Anyway, manga typically is about 200 pages a piece. They're getting really popular again, and I wanted something different. I got kind of bored reading the book I'm reading right now that I wanted to eventually review for this channel, and I decided I wanted to read some comic stuff recently. I don't know why, and with Super, it just kind of, after finishing that TV show, it made me want to check out some more stuff again. So again, picking up these things, I saw that they were zombie-focused, as the artwork shows here, and I was hoping they would be good, you know, and I gotta be honest with you, I'm gonna talk about each book individually because they're very different in a lot of ways on what the goals are, what the tone is. It's what do I even start with? It's a post-apocalyptic series, obviously, involving zombies. We follow a young woman named Maki? Yeah, M-A-K-I, Maki, who wakes up on the floor, basically naked, and she is... she looks ravaged, is what I'll say. And all of a sudden she starts to realize she is caught up in a zombie apocalypse. But she meets another guy who is like a military man. She also finds a small boy named Shota, I think is what his name is, which seems a very common name amongst a lot of manga stuff I've been reading recently. Anyway, she takes care of this little kid, but she also runs into a soldier who crawls into the room with like a torn up hand and half of his leg has been eaten. And he's probably going to die soon. He's giving her answers about her and the little boy. Apparently, Maki and Shota were recently zombies for like a year. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. They found a vaccine, they gave it to these two, and now they're okay. They're back to their normal state. And now that they're okay, they feel like, hey, this vaccine can work. But there was an outbreak inside of the lab that they got the vaccine developed in, and things are going awry, basically. So now these two have to get out and try to go to this place called the Tokyo Dome, I believe. I think it's what the name was. It's been about a week since I read the book, or the 2 books. So they're looking for this place called the Tokyo Dome, which is kind of like a civic center for like, you know, public stuff, but actually turned into like a refugee camp in the midst of this crisis. And it's kind of interesting how they're going to have to go there. And the thing is, this first volume is mainly focused on just them trying to get here, as well as a single chapter in the very end of the book. It's called a zero chapter or something, where basically it's like a prologue to that first chapter in the book, to just kind of give you some background on somebody else in the story. And that's really it. That's the whole volume, is just them trying to travel over to this place to get there. And as good as the artwork is, which I do want to show you again, I'll give you the picture in the back where you basically open up and it tells you, hey, stop, you gotta read this book backwards. Here's the art from that. The zombie looks freaking sick, right? Now, this is the thing, there's not enough zombies in here. Yeah, you have the typical post-apocalyptic thing of we have to avoid outside because there's so many zombies out there. But when it comes to seeing the zombies, when it comes to actively seeing them attack people or attack our main characters, you don't get a whole lot of that. For 200 pages, you kind of, I guess, arguably do. The gore, when it is shown, is typically pretty good, or pretty horrific sometimes. Not always, but sometimes it's pretty horrific. Excuse me. It's kind of graphic sometimes. I kind of like it for that, but also at the same time, it's kind of a letdown. If I'm being honest with you. I actually like Volume 2 more than I like Volume 1, but Volume 1 is not the biggest piece of crap ever. It's just a letdown. It's kind of disappointing, but again, every zombie manga, that's what it should be called, a zomba. Every single zomba I've read, I've been let down, because they have typically been kind of dull. But I can't remember the other one I read, but I read something else. I think it was High School of the Dead. I read like the first volume of that, and it wasn't bad. I liked it better than I like this series, but, you know, it was alright. It wasn't great. A little too sexualized, if I'm being honest with you. But anyway, it doesn't really matter, right? So this particular story, just being focused on these people traveling, it's basically a road trip, which I've said constantly. I'm not a fan of that most of the time because of how it doesn't really seem to do anything new when you have a road trip story. I don't care if it's a cartoon movie or a book. It doesn't matter to me. It's always the same type of thing over and over again. This is no different. The characters aren't really that relatable. I don't think Maki or Shota really have much developed in them, aside from Shota knowing that he killed his parents, mainly his mom. That is fascinating, and they don't really do anything with him or Maki until the second volume. They do some really good stuff with them in that second volume, and it never pays off, because I'm utterly convinced the series was canceled at some point. I'm convinced of that. I don't care what anybody says. I'm convinced, because of the way the second book ended. But there are so many things that are started in that second book that are never really satisfyingly ended, you know? And it really bothered me, because this first volume was really lacking in that. When I got into Volume 2 and knew the clock was ticking on how fast I was going to be done with that, I was hoping for a lot more. I didn't really get anything. But I'll save that for when I review that book. For this first book, it never really got off the ground for me. It doesn't have much going for character stuff. It just really lacks in writing or anything like that. It's more about the violence, but even that's not in the forefront, like I said, so it kind of lacks in every respect of any audience that wants to go view this. You know, if you're lacking in story and plot and characters, which this book is, then at least make up for it in gore. They don't even do that. So, I'm sorry, as good as the artwork is, it doesn't save the book for me. It just doesn't. As a road trip story, it just doesn't work for me personally. With that being said, though, Crueler Than Dead, Volume 1 out of 2, is not a bad book. I don't want to go away from this review with you or myself feeling that way. I don't want to misunderstand what I'm saying about the book. It's just a big disappointment is the big thing here. If you like manga, if you like comics, if you like zombie stories, maybe you'll like this more than I did. I'm not a big zombie guy, but if you happen to be, maybe this is up your alley more than it was mine. With all that being said, though, it was alright. It was really alright, disappointing, but alright. With that being said, though, I'm going to finish up this review and rate it, and then I'm going to go on to review Volume 2 in the next video, so hopefully you'll check that out as well if you want to. If I had to rate Crueler Than Dead, Volume 1, on a 5-star basis, I think I would give it like maybe a 2 out of 5. It was really disappointing, man. Very bland. Very, very bland. Very unoriginal in that respect. But like I said, Volume 2, you have to read Volume 1 to understand what's happening in Volume 2. For the most part, and if you do that, Volume 2 really improves on a lot of things, even though it's not perfect by any means, but that's just my opinion. Anyway, have you read Crueler Than Dead Volume 1 and 2? What did you think about it? I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments down in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think about the book, or the series, or anything. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, God bless you all, and goodbye.